Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming, hardy souls that you are. Some of you may remember that this session last year was the morning after the Brexit vote. So that was quite that seared into my memory that somehow after that extraordinary event we had to sit here on the beach and talk about marketing, which didn't quite somehow seem to be what was on everybody's mind. But today we can focus laser-like on creativity and marketing with my panelists, Susan Johnson, the CMO of SunTrust, John Rudaizky, who's the head of communications at EY, and Geraldine Calpin, who's the CMO of Hilton Worldwide. And I think just because it's Friday and because, it's the end of the week at Cannes, start with something we haven't quite done otherwise this week and say, what are your sort of impressions of Cannes this week? I think, Geraldine, for your sins, you've been here all week, and I don't know how you've survived it, but anyway, tell us what you take away from Cannes so far.
I think really three things. One, when I walked through the work in the Palais, the amount of work that is, and the amount of brands that are really focused on being a purpose-driven brand and how you talk to your customers around not what your product is, but what you stand for. I thought that's really, I've never seen it as strong as that. Secondly, I think, we're all into data-driven and digital and technology, and the world changes all the time. But people are still people. And I think the importance of balancing, particularly in our field, because the CFOs are not going to balance it, but balancing digital and data and technology with creative thought is really important, and making sure that we talk to people like human beings and be really personal. And then the third thing, it's like Vegas. It's like a day here, it's like a dog year. A day here is like a week anywhere else. And I'm still here, but I'm getting out of here now, right after this.
What happens in Cannes stays in Cannes, right?
Yes.
So
but thank you, everybody, for showing up.
John.
Hey, everyone, and yes, never again on a Friday morning at the end of Cannes. I have to say, having that coffee this morning and getting the brain in gear is harder by the day, but you've just arrived, I think.
Oh, wow.
I have had so many takeaways, and like every time I come here, you walk away inspired. I think if there's one thing about Cannes, is it just inspires you to think afresh. Unfortunately, I've yet to get into the Palais, which is my mission for the next few hours of my final hours in Cannes, to see the work. I think there's a few takeaways. One, maybe we'll come back to that whole purpose conversation, is a lot of people have been wondering why Cannes has moved from a very core creative conversation with all the platforms and the digital conversation around us. And I think, overall my key takeaway is the conversation now is around true end-to-end customer experience fueled by digital. And there's this huge convergence between how do you deliver a brand experience? What does your brand live in the experience? So if you take away all, there's never been a better time to see your brand experience from the digital enterprise all the way through to the storytelling of the brand on the outside. If you're buying something online, how does that experience move you or reward you or inspire you about the brand? And if that experience is wrong, it doesn't matter how much storytelling you do, you've lost it. And I know you've been quite an innovator in that whole space about the experience. So for me, that's the biggest conversation. I think it's the biggest opportunity for marketing in general now, is that marketing has to be at the boardroom conversation because it's connected to the sales, it's connected to the experience, it's connected to the service like absolutely never before. So that's the big takeaway.
Okay, actually quite a lot of overlapping themes there, which we'll, I'm sure, explore more. It's interesting that you say that you haven't been to the Palais because, and that Cannes has changed, because you speak to old-timers from Cannes, and they talk about the good old days where it really was all about the creativity, their heart in the ads, and they would spend hours looking at the actual creative output in the Palais. They would watch the films, and they would look at the print ads, and that you haven't even been to the Palais. So that just, and you come from an agency background.
It's booked in for the next few hours.
Okay.
I mean, just to respond to that, I do think that Cannes has to remain and should remain all about that. And we'll come on to talk about creativity, I'm sure, in this conversation. And I think, frankly, I think Cannes have done very well to retain that core essence. Because if it moves away from that, it will become a very different...
It's lost its soul.
It's lost its soul. I think most, certainly most CMOs I've spoken to, and myself particularly, come here to be re-energized about the work and what to do in storytelling.
Now, Susan, this question is a bit unfair to you because you've only just arrived in Cannes, so your takeaways are going to be on the basis of rather less than a week. But are there some first impressions, perhaps?
Well, I just got in last night, so I'm looking for my inspiration today.
Okay, right. Well, let's. What I want to do is sort of explore a bit more in depth with each of you in turn what your focus is at the moment, and in a sense your the big themes for you, and then we'll have a common conversation. But Susan, just for the benefit of those who aren't from America, perhaps not so familiar with your bank, it's the 10th largest in the US, so that's pretty big stuff. Atlanta based, came out of the economic crisis well, and you've just heard some talk about purpose, and purpose is very much of a big thing for you. So tell us about how you've made that at the core of what you do.
I would love to. First of all, thank you for inviting me today. I've been getting a lot of questions. Why does a financial services firm want to be here? This is a long way from Wall Street to be here, but there are a number of reasons. We've been trying to do something very creative at our bank, very different for a financial institution. So I want to talk a little bit about purpose today. We are the 10th biggest bank in the U.S., and for people outside of the U.S., the banking sector is much more crowded there. So there are over 6,000 banks. So we're one of the major players. And about 5 years ago, we were struggling with performance. So we were not performing as well as some of our peers. So we decided to go back to the core of who we are, to our essence and our ethos, our history, and declare a purpose. And that has had very significant impact for our organization.
You said to me over the phone that you were the first purpose-driven bank in the U.S. Is that? I mean,
yes.
Can you verify that claim? Is that? I mean,
yeah. No, but nobody has questioned that yet. So as far as we know, we are the first purpose-driven bank in the U.S. And as everybody knows, there's a long way between declaring a purpose and actually living your purpose. And so for 2.5 years. After we declared our purpose, we did nothing externally, no marketing, all internal preparation. And you cannot go into an office or a branch. And just so you know, we have investment banking, commercial banking, retail banking. You cannot go into an office without hearing a personal story of how somebody is living our purpose, which is lighting the way to financial well-being. So when we did go external, for the marketers, in the audience, I just want to tell about the marketing side of it. Finally, last year when we went external, because 75% of Americans are dealing with this stress of financial stress, we decided to go big with the Super Bowl. And the most important thing I thought at that time was to make sure I had some partners, some agency partners that I could kind of lock arms with, because we wanted to go in a different direction. We decided not to launch a campaign, but to launch a movement for financial well-being. So we picked Strawberry Frog, which specializes in social movements, in social cultural movements. The founder, Scott Goodson, wrote the book Uprising. So we partnered with them in New York and with Text 100 in London, and we decided to launch a movement in the Super Bowl. And as you can imagine, we kind of white-knuckled the night through the Super Bowl, because we didn't talk about products, we didn't advertise any solutions or offers, we just talked about we want to start a movement. So I'll just fast forward to the end of the story today. I'll fast forward to today. We sit the night of the Super Bowl. We tied for #1 in social sentiment. Our brand consideration is up significantly. Revenue's up, deposits are up, loans are up, and we feel that the purpose has really had a significant influence on people's lives.
So there's been quite a lot of talk about purpose on our panels, and it is very much a theme, has been a theme this week. But I have to say it's not all been in one direction. I think it was on yesterday's panel, someone was saying that talked about actually a purpose backlash of people, I suppose, having a bit of a reaction against the idea that everybody talked about purpose, but it didn't always reflect something real. It was a bit like the old CSR days, where there was a lot of basically just doing it for the sake of feeling you have to do it and it sounds good, so you talk about purpose. Now, clearly, from what you're saying, goes much deeper. You went through a whole process for this. What do you say about that? Is purpose, in a sense, getting a bit of a bad name from almost overuse? And that's not a good thing from your point of view, because you mean it, right?
Yeah, there's no question there's been a lot of overuse in the terms of purpose-driven organizations. We talk to a lot of agencies and consultants about purpose, and the key has been the internal discipline to prepare internally and not to just let it be a facade. So one of the things that we did is we created a metric, which is how many people are taking steps towards financial confidence. I'm so happy to say 1.7 million people since we launched last year have taken an actual step. And that centered the organization and made it real and grounded. Now, of course, we measure performance in parallel to that, but that was one measure that just made it real.
So the purpose, you define it as lighting the way to financial well-being. How does that translate into business for the bank? Because, I mean, you can have all the purpose in the world, but ultimately your purpose is also to make money out.
Yeah, what it's done is open our brand to new clients and customers. So it's opened, it's given us new avenues to talk to people because it resonates strongly. And so our performance in parallel, since we became a purpose-driven bank, our performance has risen in parallel with that. So our stock performance, our sales, our revenue. And of course, you can never say everything that relates to performance increase, but we're tracking them in parallel, and they're both going in the right direction. Because the key to a purpose-driven organization is aligning all the leadership team. It's not just marketing.
So give us, finally, and then we'll move on to John, give us a bit of a flavor of that. Clearly it was a long process, and sounds as if it was both top-down and bottom-up in the bank. Give us a flavor of how you got senior management to sort of buy into this and actually live it.
Yeah, a lot of debate and a lot of head banging. It's not easy because at the beginning you don't know how it's going to relate to performance. So we started slow and we started to see the gradual uptake and the improvement in retention in the company, the improvement in employee engagement and pride in the company. And once you start to see those things increase, more and more leadership came on board. So, we weren't all blind believers, but over time it happened.
Okay, John, purpose is clearly something you mentioned as well, and I think you mentioned you had some data on purpose. Is that right? You've done some research on it. What does that show?
I mean, it sounds like we're on a very similar journey. I think we talk about purpose very much being in the boardroom, not a loose brand wrapping, because I think if there is any backlashing, it's often not grounded in the business strategy. And so for us, I think we were also the first professional services organization to embark on purpose, frankly, before I joined. And it's called Building a Better Working World. And we have now 250,000 people around the world. When I joined 3 years ago, it was 170,000 people. And the business decided, we have so much services that people don't know we do. And our primary core business that many of you will know is around traditional accountancy and tax practice, but the business has grown into all sorts of deep transformation around the world. And the decision around launching the purpose was absolutely a business decision. In fact, it was never externalized for about 3 years, and largely when I arrived, where it became externalized. And the brief from my CEO was, in many ways, I'm not that interested in the externalization. Inspire our people, because if people are inspired by the purpose, then they will achieve extraordinary things. And I think if there's one thing I think from the world I come from, in the advertising world, is a lot of the best creative ideas that I've been involved with, I've seen people developing around purpose, have sat on the outside, and they haven't got into the fabric of the organization, into the business strategy. So I think for us, purpose is about activating it with our people. We have a program called Better Begins With You, which is fundamentally about what are the innovations around living our purpose day to day. As part of that, we launched what we call the Beacon Institute, which is really a convening around purpose, the conversation of purpose. we're calling it, from rhetoric to reality at the moment, which is, it's not about talking about it, it's about doing things. And we've just done a survey, don't quote me in the exact number in my head, about 2,500 people. Tend to be C-suite around the world, big corporations. I think something like 90% of these CEOs and C-suite think purpose is a critical factor for success in the future.
But who's going to say it isn't? No, purpose isn't.
But only 30% feel that they're activating it.
Okay. Right.
And I think that's the challenge. And I think, again, from all the research we've done, there are a number of reasons for that. One is businesses are afraid to embark on the purpose journey. At the boardroom, I was just recently at our World Entrepreneur event, and we had a session around purpose. And there was a non-exec director of a number of boards, and what she outlined is, unless you have your board investor community aligned around your purpose on that journey with you, it's very hard. You need a total stakeholder engagement. And I think, again, coming back to Cannes, a lot of the purpose conversation is still sitting outside of the boardroom, and it sounds like it's absolutely in your boardroom. And that for us is the key, and that's what all of our research says is in the boardroom, or it becomes an empty vessel.
Now, did you encounter, one of the challenges we had is it takes investment to invest in purpose, and it doesn't have an immediate impact on sales. So did you have those discussions, debates? How did you approach that?
I mean, our total leadership has bought into it because it's galvanized people. I think just one quick distinction is that, and I think it gets mixed up, purpose as some kind of social enterprise versus a galvanizing purpose that unites the whole organization across the total stakeholder group. And that's it's quite an important distinction, that, which again gets...
But you've talked quite a lot of the importance of the senior level, at the board level.
Absolutely.
Clearly that's vital, and that's sort of outward to the clients you have as well, their C-suite. But what about you mentioned you're a lot of people, very big recruiter. Yeah. Is purpose, the fact that you can talk about that in the recruitment process, is that an important thing in getting the people that you need?
I mean, it's been a huge driver of our talent attractiveness. In fact, frankly, I joined with the brief, which is we've launched this purpose, how do we,
I was talking about millennials being right, but that's not quite your category.
Absolutely. We've seen in all the research, millennials, next generation, they want to join an organization with a bigger purpose. There's lots of conversation about, profit and purpose. We've seen that. It's a fact. It's well documented. And I think, frankly, I think the exciting thing in the environment of the world that we're living in with big social challenges is that because the boardroom have recognized that the millennials want that, I think there's genuinely a force for good in business today through business like yours that are going to drive a positive impact in the world.
It needs to run through the blood of the organization. It's not a marketing campaign. It's not how you show up. And to echo the same 2 points, at Hilton, we're one of the biggest employers. Last year, we employed 240,000 new people in the world. And attracting those new young people, purpose really does help you do that, as well as attract, to your point, new customers and keep that loyalty with customers, because customers want to be attracted to brands that they believe in and reflect their values. So really, making sure it runs through the blood of the organization, not just in the boardroom and not just in the field, everywhere.
So I think everybody's in violent agreement over the idea that purpose is not easy when you do it right. It's a long process, and it's hard work, investment, and so on. Can I move you on to something else which a lot of people talk about, but which also isn't easy, as you know as well as anybody, which is this digital physical thing.
Yep.
And for the benefit of everyone here, Geraldine came from the tech background, I think, in the company, or developed the Hilton app before
which I made you download before this
which I downloaded and which you'll describe it in more graphic detail than I can, but the really distinctive thing, or one of the really distinctive things, is that it allows you to book an individual room much as you would an individual airline seat. So really pulling in a real physical outcome into the digital world. But that's not easy because I can't begin to think of all the clever stuff that has to go on in the background to that. So how does this physical and digital come together in a real way?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. I love it. So in our business, we're in the business of people serving people, right? So it's about smiles and hospitality and service. So people will say to me, so how does that work with digital in this age of the digital revolution? Because I want a hotel, I want a lovely smile, I want to know about what's going on in the local area. And so our strategy is to take the physical business that we are in, as many of us are, but our customers are no different. We're all addicted to our technology. People want to and are accustomed to controlling their lives from the palm of their hand. And our strategy is to take our physical business, combine it with digital to make 1 and 1 equal 3, to give our customers an even better experience with our technology than without it, something we call phygital, right?
How do you spell that, by the way? I was wondering. Is it a Y or an I?
It's a Y.
It's a Y.
And really, it is about you get a better experience, and it is about the customer experience. It's not about technology, as I said at the start. You know, people are still human beings. So we kind of have looked at the customer journey. Hands up who in the audience has picked their seat when they flew here on the airline. Everybody pretty much does, because you don't want the middle. But you know, you generally, I'm going to ask the question, but hands up who picked the exact room just like you picked your airline seat in your hotel.
I phoned up.
Right.
I hustled, and I still got next to the lift in the noisy room with people next to me.
And so we embarked on this technology because we saw that travellers generally always use the technology the airlines have offered. And so now Hilton are 2 years in, still the only hotel company across all of our 14 brands and 5,000 hotels. Every single one of you through the app can choose the day before you check in, you can choose the room that you want, which floor do you want to be, and where do you want to be on it. Probably not next to the vending machine or the ice machine. But we have, again, we're the only hotel company to do that, and we did it because we thought it was important for customers. And we see that it's important for customers. The Hilton app is now the highest rated app in travel in the stores in terms of how customers love it. And so once we did that at our hotels, then the next thing is customers were saying, yeah, but now I have to go in line to get my key. I've picked my room, but I still have to go to the desk to get my key. So now we have turned our technology in our app to enable you to use your phone as your room key to your door. We're now at 1,600 hotels with an aggressive rollout schedule. And we keep on that journey and embarking on that because that is phygital. That means that people can check in, they can pick the exact room that they want, they have a better experience. And when they do stop by the front desk, it's about asking about local transactions. It's not, or local attractions, great restaurants, who's playing jazz in town, rather than having to go there because they have to do a transaction, they have to get their key. So
Geraldine,
really,
my phygital request for you is, can I please set the room temperature half an hour before I actually get to the room? So.
That's coming, believe it or not. We have that in test.
Very good.
As well as your preferred channels on the TV screen, so that you don't have to continue to click through and find out where the particular channel or your Spotify, your Netflix, your whatever accounts will all be also. That's where we're headed next, all preloaded in the room.
Could you give us a bit of a flavour of how hard this was to do? Because, you know, it sounds so obvious, but, you know, the good ideas are always obvious with hindsight. But, you know, why hasn't everybody else done this, or why hasn't everybody done this long ago? Presumably the answer is actually the data, the technology behind it. You know, someone comes into a room and they overstay. They say, actually, I'm not checking out today. I have to stay 2 more days. And somebody else thinks they booked that room. Lots of complexity behind the simple idea.
So it was important it wasn't easy and it wasn't cheap. I would say it was cost effective. And the one big thing for me is make it customer focused, but also if you're going to do something good that customers love, you have to do it at scale, because there's nothing worse than you getting to like something and then you show up somewhere and it's, oh, we don't have that yet. So we really wanted to do it at scale, which means we had to get plumbing in the background in the hotels. And I don't mean physical plumbing, I mean the infrastructure of the technology, such that if you're sitting here in Cannes and you're trying to check in for your stay tomorrow night at the Waldorf Astoria Beverly Hills, you can do that, but we know which of the rooms that you have booked are available because we talk to the system in Beverly Hills through the app. And the reason it's kind of complicated is every 777 is the same, and every time a flight lands, everybody gets off. Actually, every floor in every hotel is different. We have 5,000 hotels. We had to map them all individually. We have to talk to the technology to make sure that the rooms are due to be checked out. And, you know, as you say, customers don't always say what they're going to say. They'll say, I'll check out on Friday, and they say, actually, I'll stay through to Saturday. So it's not 100%, or we have guests that trash the rooms and things like that, where we can't release it the next day. So it really, for us, it wouldn't be 100% of the time, but 98% of the time, you get that room that you picked the day before, and if you don't, we push notify you and let you know, just like we push you and say, your room's ready, here's your key. So, and as I say, we are 4.7 out of 5 stars lifetime in the store. So it's not just me.
So what I think is fascinating about this for all of us is it sort of feels like on the frontier of stuff that's being done, and it's also you can all very much relate to it because we all stay in hotel rooms and we all use our apps and so on. Susan, what about stuff that you're doing on this frontier? I mean, you're also dealing with customers who are coming in often physically into a bank, but then you're ending up providing them with what amounts to a digital service in the end. Yeah. So what's the cutting edge? I know you've got stuff going on at your stadium in Atlanta, for example.
Great example.
New, yeah.
And I don't know, can we use the term phygital, or is that your term? But it's a great term. So what we did, we're pretty much in the people business as well, because when people are dealing with their money, it's very emotional, and you have to smile and make them feel comfortable. And so one of the things we did is we took a little bit of a twist in a naming rights deal. So, you know, what we try to do with purpose is to take traditional marketing techniques and put a little twist, do them a little different. So we just bought the naming rights for the Atlanta Braves new ballpark, which is the Braves are the oldest running ball team in the U.S. And so we built this new ballpark and a whole battery around it. So it's live, work, play, which is the new trend. Now you have apartments, you have retail, you have restaurants, and it's all one thing. What we did is build a financial well-being center right out of the ballpark. So that's a little different, and that hasn't been done before. It's a free resource for financial well-being, to learn about money, to help you get on top of your finances, but it's a lot of fun. So we use digital interactive displays. You can hit the ball out of the park. You can catch. Everything's interactive, immersive, digital. It's a lot of fun, and you learn a little bit about finance on the side.
Does this operate on every day, not just on game days?
Not just, so game days is only 80 days a year, and we operate all year round. And so people can come there in the whole live, work, play environment. So it's something new. It's experimental for us. It's an investment in our purpose and the people that believe in us, that we can help them. And so far, we just opened last month. We have 15,000 people have gone through the experience, and we think that it's something that's going to work.
John, how about you?
I mean, I'm trying to separate, you know, as a business, digital experience is a core part of what we do across the whole gamut. Okay, so for us, digital is part of our business. We don't see it as a separate entity, and within that, we cover everything from analytics to cyber. So as a business practice, I would say we're plugged into many of these conversations and solving those complex issues. I think from probably the biggest conversation we've been having around talent, around that, just about how do you get in your marketing teams the talent that understand the connectivity between high emotion impact and then highly emotive experience from a digital point of view. And so there's a lot of work around how we can get the right mix of talent, unexpected talent, to work together. I think diversity. We talk a lot publicly about women and diversity, but actually the other biggest play is about diversity of skills now. Contingent workforce. Again, that's a big conversation for us, is about how you bring in.
What do you mean by contingent workforce?
In terms of people who are not necessarily joining your organization for a long time, but actually coming in short term to do the kind of work that you need. And so actually...
What we used to call temps, but they're now called contingent
workforce. Yeah, but
it's
because going back to your millennial question, that's something that actually numbers of people are choosing to do that as a permanent state of mind, and you need to tap those people.
But you're actually doing something quite innovative here, it seems to me, with your questions that you're getting.
I'm glad you asked.
In there. No, because I was looking at them just before.
When you were talking about your booking online. I guess, in many ways, thinking about it, I suppose our technology is questions. In bringing alive our purpose, we believe that in solving the complex issue, the questions you ask lead to new answers for the world. The better the question, the better the answer, the better the world works. So in a Cannes first, actually, we decided to put in some technology where the audience for the first time can ask the stage questions live. And they come up live and then they unnamed. And we've had some just tremendous feedback and questions coming through the audience every day. And at the end of it, we're going to analyze what are the biggest questions, trending questions that we've had. Because rather than just what the stage is saying, we believe it's the next question that will solve something that we haven't even thought about.
So you're out to make me redundant, basically, which is a good idea. Better questions.
Anytime you need some, we'll send you some.
Very good. I want to ask you a question about data, which lies behind a lot of this. Geraldine, you obviously, your app is essentially a data, has data at the back end. But one of the themes, again, we've been discussing this week is that there's often too much data and you drown in it and you don't know what to measure. So what are you measuring these days? What are your metrics from data? What's the art of using data as far as you're concerned? I'll start with you, Geraldine.
And I think, I said at the start, we have to be data-directed, maybe not data-driven, i.e. there are other ingredients to a good decision and a good product. And data is kind of always, it's what you have and what you know, which is sometimes the rear view mirror. And customers and we, and even in the tech world, we don't know what technology is going to look like in 10 years' time. So I think you need to make sure that you have access to the right data. You don't have too much. You kind of obsess and prioritize over 10 things. What are the 10 things that you're going to focus on? Because you've got 50 million data points. Nobody can possibly do anything with those. So what are the 10 things that most critically impact your performance? Focus on them. But have a lot of the art and have a lot of the creative thought around where do we go next, and watch. I always watch what happens in other industries, not just in hospitality, because technology and what customers expect in the next best thing is instantly expected of everybody. So it's not industry specific. It's, this great new thing came out of this tech company. They want it everywhere. They want it ubiquity. So I think it's, don't over-obsess about data and just try and get it, simplify it down to a few things.
So what have you wrestled down to? What have you grappled with?
The number one thing, honestly, is customer satisfaction. Because back to, we were talking about earlier.
So that survey that we get after we've stayed in every hotel room, tell us about your stay, that is actually, because you often wonder when you fill those in, is anybody really looking at that? But this is actually important stuff for you, is it?
Because it's the same as purpose. If you get happy customers, they become your best marketeers. I think one of your panelists earlier in the week talked about the team members being, or the associates, I think they refer to as being their best marketeers. I agree with that. I also think our most important marketeers are our customers. And if we get that right, you've got billions of people around the world being your advocate in their social channels, with their friends, over dinner, in hotels. So of course there are other things like return on ad spend and all of that. But ultimately, if you get customer satisfaction right, people will hunt out your product and stay with you rather than anywhere else, all things equal. So,
yeah.
Susan,
I agree with that. And one of the ways that we use data, financial services organizations have a lot of information, a lot of analytics, and we all have large analytics teams. And we measure take-up of insights. So we can develop an insight. We can predict what you're going to do next. Let's say you're a small business. We know 2 months from now you're going to have a cash flow issue. We can give you that information. We can help suggest things to prevent it. What we've got tripped up on is, so we were measuring the number of insights that clients are taking and using and doing something with. Actually, do you want that number to go up or down is the question, because once you're solving these questions, these issues for clients, then you don't want the insights to come up at all anymore. You don't want people to have cash flow problems. So once you solve the issues, the number should go down again. So it's really tricky, and we have to take a really careful look at it.
Part of better questions is the right questions of data, right? So.
Absolutely. I mean, one is I don't think enough people truly understand how to look at the data. We had a session again at the entrepreneur event where Mark Cuban, from Shark Tank, was talking about AI as an example, which is data-based, and he said he spends 4 hours a day trying to understand it himself rather than relying on other people. And I think the challenge for all of us as marketeers is, do we truly understand what data can provide? And then the other part of that conversation was that we've seen is that with all machines, robotics, automation, AI, the one thing that none of that can do itself yet is ask the question. And I think, on the one hand, I think we will have to understand what data can do by immersing ourselves. And most critically, which is probably, one certain last remain of creativity, is that the questions robots can't yet come up with.
So you've talked about robots and AI. How is that going to be? We're really at the early stages of this still. So how's that going to play out, as far as you can tell, in the realm of aiding creativity and aiding the marketers?
I mean, it feels to me the conversations that I have seen have tended to be, can AI create new ad campaigns? Okay, which I think is probably a misplaced starting point. I think one thing that will certainly happen is automation, efficiency, the kind of process that many agencies are still doing in a very linear, old-fashioned way. So I think for us, certainly we're using huge amount of machines, robots, to do some of the automated stuff. And in many ways, we see that as freeing up the more creative end. So I think it's an opportunity. There's lots of conversations.
So more creativity, not less.
More creativity, not less. But not through relying on a machine to come up with the answers, come up with the kind of creative leap, but help you get the fast solutions around it.
Geraldine?
I think for us, it's less about, we are people serving people. And, you want to go into a hotel, and part of what we do is make you feel good. Like, look after you, make you feel safe, let you have a good time, and, be there to support you or help you or whatever you're there for, whether it's a business meeting, a wedding, or a romantic weekend. And so, I do think there's a lot of talk about robots, not so much in our business, because you want to see that warm smile. So our technology is more about how do we use technology to take out the transactional element and make your travel stay easier. So we've integrated Uber and things like that in the app so that it's a lot easier for you to travel, such that when you get to the hotel, it's not going to be about robots, it's about warm people, but you're not going to have to be there waiting in line and doing things that we are requiring you to do, rather than what you want to do. So I think, clearly artificial intelligence and data and all that will help us inform how we personalize your stay, will help us make sure that your account is on the screen when you walk in, or the temperature is preset per your request. That's all about data, but I think for us, certainly, robotics maybe in the back of house and in operations may help us be efficient, but we don't really see that yet at becoming the front face of Hilton.
What about in financial services? Are you using chatbots yet, for example, for your customers? And is that a more personal or less personal experience?
Yeah, I think that's the future. That's the direction most of us are taking. So then a typical customer service person eventually will be able to look at all these chats that are going on, and they'll have a screen of all the different discussions, and they can jump into the discussion when it's important to have a person that needs to handle it, right? But they'll have an overall 30,000-foot view of things, and they can have a more satisfying interaction with clients. So that's the direction we're going.
So please have your questions ready. I'm going to throw it open in a moment, but I want to ask one more round of almost philosophical question, I suppose. There's been one of the themes that we've had on most days, I guess, is the role of the CMO. And the role of the CMO seems to be at one level growing, lots more functions. You have to be the chief growth officer, you have to be the chief personnel officer, you have to be the chief technology officer in some ways. But at the same time, I think, Geraldine, you were saying to me that the CMO matters less at a certain level because what the market does matters more. You can't influence it as much as maybe you could in the in the past. So what do you think the role of the CMO is going to be in the coming year, 2, 3 years?
So I'll answer that and just pick up on something John said earlier about we don't see digital as a separate department within the company. It's a bit like purpose. It's pervasive and it's everywhere. And only if you do that can you then connect the dots around all the different interactions, because customers don't see your departments. They see how they interact with you. And so I was the head of digital within Hilton for the last 12 years, and then 2 years ago we brought digital marketing and traditional marketing together as one, because again, customers are omni-channel, they're looking at you everywhere, so kind of break down those silos. That helps our teams work together. For my role, I think, for me, CMO now, certainly in our business in Hilton, is less about marketing and advertising and much more about customer experience. And so that means that it is, and if you get the customer experience right, as I said, you have millions of marketeers. And so of course we have marketing campaigns and advertising agencies and all of that. We do that traditional. But if you focus on the customer experience first and you get that right, marketing becomes a lot easier, because you've got a great story and you have a differentiated story that is easy to tell and easy for customers to buy.
And less important because you have all these myriad customers who are doing the marketing for you, so the marketer becomes a less crucial function. If the
Yes, and customers become more loyal, which means that you don't constantly have to put people in at the top, because once you've attracted customers, you give them great experiences in your banks, etc., and help them with their financials, or they have a great experience at Hilton that they can't have anywhere else, through technology or through our people or through our purpose. Then they come back to you, which means, again, you don't have to do so much advertising. I hate to say that in front of a bunch of CMOs, but I do think it has definitely changed.
John, you don't have marketing in your title, do you? You have communications. Oh, you do marketing and communications.
I'm brand and marketing leader.
Okay, fine. So,
just before you jump in, John, I will say it's still a really tough job.
Thank you, Geraldine.
Well, no, the thing that's frightened me was it's getting tougher, but it matters less. Is the gist of it. So that's the worst of both worlds. But
I think it matters more, and it will continue to be imperative, on the basis that we're living in an age where we don't know what's going to challenge any business next.
That's true.
And so for me, I think the fundamentals of a marketing leader is to continue to build an emotive narrative that engages customers. Yeah. So I think from that end, I think it's exactly the same. I think the platforms around it are different. I think you've got to emotively engage in real experiences like you're doing. But, the power of storytelling, I believe, remains a critical component of any CMO. However, you have to execute it depending on your business. So there's all sorts of businesses here, so one can't generalize. That's the first thing. I do think there's probably two critical shifts, which is attitudinally. I think, we've been talking about superfluid markets, the fact that overnight, there's this concept of viscosity, that things just can shift overnight. And we see that from a business point of view, and I think that's the same from a marketing point of view, is how quickly, the computing industry's agile thinking is something that marketing people and agencies, frankly, are having to learn and play catch up. So I think one is about being more fluid in the way you think about things. And the other one, frankly, is digital. I'm co-running a big, of our own transformation of our own platform and our own CMS, and no one owns that. We're a complete partnership with the business, with the technologists, and I think becoming, horizontal thinkers is the biggest challenge for a marketer, because you have to understand the boardroom issues, the growth issues, the business like never before, and then you still have to preserve the basic long-held belief, which is how you're connecting with your customer.
I think chief growth officer is the best term out of all the terms that as responsibility of the chief marketing officer, and it is about building culture and a reason to believe. And I think the advertising is still important, because even if you have the best services in the world, if nobody knows about it, it's not going to help. So we have to make sure we get the word out. But the thing that I advise marketers, I think one of the most important things is to always exercise both sides of your brain, the right and the left side, because that's a difficulty now. We got to jump back and forth all day long. And I'm a technologist. I come from a development background before I went into marketing. And so I always question the techies on the team. And I think it's very important for marketers to dig one level deeper than you think when you're talking to your analytics team. I was talking to somebody on in our analytics team last week, and they speak a different language often, right? And so he was telling me about some insight he had in 3 in the morning. And he, understands some behavior of our clients, but didn't quite know how to communicate it. But I kept digging and asking questions, and I was like, oh my, that's a great insight. Let's use that. How can we get that out? And so not to let that divide between the right brain and left brain thinkers in the organization happen, but to always really dig into it. I think that's where marketers can help with the translation the best.
Yeah.
Thank you. Who would like to ask a question? Gosh, lots of hands. Do you know what? I think we'll take a few questions and let you ask them. So one at the back here first. And if you could say briefly who you are.
Hello, my name is Scott Goodson, and I think anyone who speaks at the Wake Up with the Economist deserves great applause and kudos to be up so early in the morning. I'm just interested from a personal perspective. What's the greatest learning you've had since you became a CMO?
Should we take a few and then, down here?
Hi, Asad from Weber Shamwick. I'm interested in the value of stories versus convenience of new platforms. So if you look at Facebook in the banking world or Airbnb in the hospitality world, the convenience they provide is so great. So how do you think stories can overcome that or change how people are adopting that new technology?
Okay. Let's leave it at those two, and then we'll come to you. Yeah. Do you want to take a pick of one or both of those?
I can answer the lodging hospitality question about the convenience of other. So there are other disruptors and other industries that set up. I think as we think about our product and our brands, we're about delivering exceptional experiences. It's not about the bed, and it's not about where you're going to stay, but it's about how we make you feel when you're with us and when you leave. Great memories, even if it is a Tuesday night in Manhattan or whatever, and you're there for a business meeting. It's how do we make your life easier? How do we look after you, bring you what you want in your room, have the temperature preset, and make you feel safe and know what to expect before you get there. And I think that for big branding organizations like ours in the hospitality sector, that will continue to be, we see it. It's really important for people, and there's a very different kind of experience and a very different kind of customer than wants a bed in a particular on a particular date in a particular town, and it doesn't really matter what the standard is like or how consistent it was versus where they were before. And I just think those are two, they're both valuable businesses, but I think they're very different businesses and very different customers.
And I'll answer the question about the greatest learning. I think my greatest learning has been the importance of the voice of marketing in the boardroom. So you have to have a very loud voice, and that's very beneficial for your clients. A louder voice. So an executive team is like any other team, right? Different voices vying for share of voice. And marketers, I think, come in thinking that they have an equal voice, but your voice is so important. You have to speak loudly, and you have to balance that with humility. As long as you balance that with humility, it's going to be the best thing for your clients.
You have to speak very loudly.
Yeah, I can see the drill's in the way.
Friday morning, last day of camp,
tonight's party.
and a driller.
What's the party tonight? I talk about the greatest learning, perhaps, and I guess 3 years ago, I spent all of my formative years, in the advertising side of it, in the dark or the light side, depending on which way you are. And probably the biggest single learning I have is the internal community, the internal business, and how they feel about the marketing in a way that I never, ever felt before. And I think if there's one thing I would say that probably more agencies could do is to think about the impact of that work on the people.
That's a great point.
And I suppose I talk about the shift for me is that, frankly, with the agencies we buy confidence, and we've got two, Brandpie and Freud's, two of our agencies sitting in the audience today, and I think ultimately, what like never before I thought about it is, are these people going to confidently give us the solutions that are going to inspire 250,000 people? That's frankly our first question. And then externally, of course, is the other part of the equation. But that's the biggest shift that I've ever had.
That's a great point. One of the first things that I did in the combined role was we launched the biggest marketing campaign in our company's near 100-year history. That was a bit of a risk 6 months into the role. And it was Stop Clicking Around. We put it in TV, in radio, in our hotels, all over. We bought Rolling Stones music to go with it, and all that premium placement, the energy that gave our team members all over the world, whether you were in Egypt or Japan or America or the UK, people just really felt proud and excited. And it was a marketing campaign aimed at consumers, but it really energized and made our team members feel really proud. I was getting pictures from team members all over the world that said, I've just walked through this airport and look, they're Stop Clicking Around, and it's great. It's great.
I mean, it's the same for us. When we did our first ever campaign and posters,
right.
The energy, the tweets, the retweets, and frankly that word pride. I mean, the amount of people that come up, it just makes you feel proud. So I would say
that's a great point.
The next campaign you present to your clients, how will it make them proud in the organization?
Yeah, that's a great point.
To the front here, yeah.
You each, Brian Duggan with Building Alliances, you each started this session talking about some of the powerful innovations you've done to kind of stay ahead of your peers in each of your industries. When you look for where the next innovations come from, to what extent are you looking at partnership with the world of startups and startup innovation versus internal resources?
So I think you need a sprinkle of everything. We use internal resources for some of our legacy systems, for some of the architecture that's in every single property. Back to that thing, we need to talk to Beverly Hills or whatever, every hotel to understand which room is available, which room is not available Monday through Wednesday, etc. So some of that you need to do it internal. But we also work with major, the big tech companies, the traditional tech companies who are reinventing themselves. And we also challenge ourselves and work with Silicon Valley and others, frankly. Not all the innovation comes out of there, but we do have partnerships where people come in almost like Shark Tank, they pitch an idea, and that's where we place the small bets. We give it a go, see if it will catch fire, see if we can integrate it into our systems. Is it valuable to customers once we've done it? And some of those cases we have really built, into the backbone of our companies. They've been really successful, and others, they fizzled out, they didn't work. But I think if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. So a bit of all of them.
I think partnership is all important in your strategy. We started working with a firm called Lightstream a few years ago, so you can get a loan online, no paper involved from the whole process, and you get your answer right, you get your money right away. So that was with a California startup, and so we develop a lot internal. We do a lot with partnerships. On the analytics side, it's really important, we feel, to keep the competitive advantage part of analytics in-house. But there's a lot of analytics, data scraping, and different information and transactional type activities that you can outsource, but it's important to keep part of that in-house.
I mean, multifaceted, I would say. We've got everything from an innovation team led by someone called Jeff Wong in the States, in Silicon Valley, who is looking at innovation, future state of how we deliver services in the world. We have our entrepreneur program, so we're immersed in the entrepreneurs that are bringing new solutions to the world. I think, so it's kind of multifaceted in the way we approach it. I do think there's one of those challenges for all of us as marketeers and all of you in the room is, what choices are you making? I've been saying that we're sort of living in the era of an and, not an all. And I think you can be so excited about the next thing, but is the next thing really worth investing in? And I think that's the hardest thing for all of us, is what choices are you making? And frankly, one of the most successful things we did last year, which was part innovation, the Disruptor series that we did with The Economist, It was part innovation. It was a foray into video that we did with them, but it was part good old-fashioned storytelling, high-quality video content, and I think we ended up getting something like 8 million engagements. So I think across the board, there's a kind of platform of excitement, and then there's just keep it so-called traditional, because it still works.
To the point on partnerships, can I ask you, are you managing more or fewer partnerships now than, say, 5 years ago, do you think?
More, there's no question.
More.
That's generally been the answer to... I think we had Mark Pritchard of P&G saying that he deliberately tried to cut it down because it was just getting out of hand to simplify, but the general trend is more. Sorry, you had a question. Thank you for your patience.
Hi, my name's Kim. I'm a rising senior at Rhodes College. And I know, Susan, you kind of highlighted this a bit with your discussion about the SunTrust Park, which I've been to, and it's fabulous. I love it. I'm from Atlanta. And I've been hearing a lot of discussion about, this idea of collaboration over the week. And I'm just kind of wondering how you guys feel about the importance of internal and external collaboration in your organizations.
Yeah, collaboration is a buzzword, but it's very meaningful to me. What we started doing with our agency partners, with the presidents of our main agency partners, is doing team building as though it's internal team building. So, we always say everybody work together, everybody's got to work together like friends. We actually treat it as methodically as we do internal team building, and bring in outsiders to make sure that we're building this tight team that can trust each other and debate actively, and that's been working very well for us.
And I think there's non-traditional collaboration as well, which is like crowdsourcing. So perhaps even with customers who might never use your product but have a great idea, you can actually get great ideas just sporadically from all over the world, and not where you would traditionally expect, but having tight partners to work on, because we don't have all the answers. Our agencies don't have all the answers, but getting two brains together, that's back to that 1 and 1 is 3. You can collaborate, debate, argue, and hopefully get a better answer as a result.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges for collaboration is credit. And collaboration takes teamwork. Everyone has to leave their egos on the outside. But then how do you apportion credit? How do you reward agencies? That's a challenge to I think, for marketeers to create safe spaces to collaborate. Yeah. Is really important. The only other area that goes through my mind is we're running creative training sessions at the moment where we're doing with oyster catchers actually. We're doing a real mix of all of our teams, PR, social media, so-called traditional advertising teams and so forth, and we bring them all together to develop completely neutral ideas around that. And that's been hugely, hugely powerful at getting collaborative thinking and collaborative ideas through that collaboration.
I wanted to build on one thing Geraldine said earlier about the importance of engaging the teammates around the world. We started a new role called the Chief Storyteller. And that's an internal role to tell our story. And we had a casting call, and we had auditions. We had more people apply than for any role ever in the company. And it was really exciting, and the talent was amazing. But now our chief storyteller goes around the company telling the stories of the teammates. It has been so engaging and inspiring, and eventually we'll take that outside. But right now, it helps us with that collaboration.
As a matter of interest, what was your chief storyteller doing before he or she became the chief storyteller? What function did they come
He was
from?
a program manager, so very
what
tactical.
What a great career move!
What a great career move!
Can I search and reapply that?
Perhaps time for one more quick question. If anybody has another, this will have to be the last one. Quick question, quick answers.
Hi, Richard Parkinson. How do you keep? We talked about purpose right at the beginning. And I'm sure you all have issues with staff retention and turnover. So how do you keep the momentum of purpose? How do you make it relevant in 5 years' time as it was today?
So I didn't talk so much about purpose.
Quickly, because we're...
I'm going to be quick. So I'm obviously answering long answers. So 97 years, we had been looking at what our purpose was. We have been internalising for the last few years. We're about to externalise it in a big way. And having 97 years in our history, we realised that actually it was there all along, and it was what our what our founder, Conrad Hilton, had said 96 years ago. And so I think if it's true to you, and if you lead by example, your CEO believes in it, and you use it as a lens through which you make decisions every day, then you don't need to promote it. It becomes who you are, and it's a great way to attract people. It's a great team member thing. But I think if you're true to it and it's authentic, people live it.
I think it's the only navigation tool through these disruptive times, and it will stay alive and the North Star so long as it lives in the boardroom.
We have purpose ambassadors. I believe we're the first organization to have purpose ambassadors, very different than brand ambassadors. Top talent in the organization that's trained to talk about money. They're trained to talk about money to their friends, families, relatives, and people in the organization, and they keep it alive throughout the company.
Okay, last quick round of questions for you all. As we've been asking all our panelists this week, your wake-up call for the year ahead.
I think marketers have a choice. You can either change the way the world sees your brand, which is what most of us do, or you can use your brand to change the way people see the world. And I think I would like to challenge marketers not to underestimate their power to do that, because it will work, it'll be good for your clients, it'll be good for your brand. You can change perception, you can change behavior.
John.
I think we're living in this era of humility where we don't know all the answers. And I think we have to spend more time understanding the technology available and then applying great content, great storytelling around it. But we have to educate ourselves more and more every day.
Balancing the beautiful people that we all are, and well, we're in Cannes after all, and the beautiful people that we employ with the obsessive requirement to use technology. So there's that digital piece, the importance of the balance. It's a bit like your left and right brain. It's art and science, it's people and digital. And you just have to move every day faster than you did the day before.
Great. Well, thank you all very much. I think, you talk about left and right brain. I think you've exercised both halves, even on a Friday morning in Cannes in a terrific way. Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
And